As I let my music fade away in the background like I've always taught myself that it possibly would, I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of AMSC, AM Sports Consultancy, commercialization of sports series with me, Anthony Morrissey, the CEO and founder of AMSC. As you'll now recognise, I've moved around the house doing different places of this. So this is another room that I'm in, but I'm sure you'll keep me entertained when I've got somebody contacting me a while ago saying, what room are you in now? Anyway, this week's been really cool for me out at AMSC. We sent out our first mail shot. We got conversations going with some really, really cool clients about how we can go and help them and really look at connecting their passion for their sport and make it unique and different. You can follow me on any of the social media platforms. I'll have it in the YouTube link below, but definitely have a conversation with me about it. If you feel that you've got a product that you don't have money to invest in, but you've got all these rights and you want to know what to do with them, whether you're a sponsor, whether you're a club, or whether you're a federation. Anyway, enough of that. I've got an amazing guest for you today. A really fantastic guest, someone who I've met in my long journey when I was working at Munster Rugby and across the board, and someone who I've watched from afar, watching conversations about where she's gone in her career, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I won't slag her about being Welsh. I promise you I won't do that. I won't go down that road. She's won enough Grand Slams to be able to give me abuse. But anyway, Holi Smith, how are you doing?
Good, very good. Thanks for that intro. That was quite nice of you, actually.
You sound surprised. Thanks very much for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it. Listen, as the head of competitions and events at the 6Nations, is the first thing I'll ask you, is it a scenario right now where you're looking at the World Cup and you're understanding what the pain that they're going through, having gone through some of the stuff that you go through during a yearly basis in 6Nations?
Yeah, exactly. And it's mad because rugby is quite a small environment, so we know, you know your colleagues, and you know people who are kind of under the pump for Rugby World Cup. Some of them are friends, some of them are colleagues. You definitely feel for them, and you know there's so much hard work that goes into these things, so many hours to think through what you believe is the right decision, and then when you come to implement that, and then obviously the feedback, whether it's, I think topical, I suppose, is the anthems, which they've obviously sorted. Which was a great, lovely idea and a fantastic initiative, and then just maybe not received in the same way as, the hours and the months of planning would have suggested. And then more recently, like the kick clashes and stuff, there's been a couple of conversations, particularly around South Africa. And yeah, we have those exact conversations and to some extent the same issues. And yeah, I mean, I do feel for them, but I also know they're all very, very competent. So it's only a matter of time before everything is kind of ironed out. And the rest of the stuff has been great. And to kind of get off to such a good start, both on the field and off the field, with something so big as the Rugby World Cup, they have done an amazing job. So for those of us who really understand what goes into it, I think it's been a success so far.
Yeah, I find that funny. Having worked in hospitality for so long, people will be complaining about the type of food, and I would be like, do you not know the weeks and months that have gone into planning the exact potato style that we're going to put on your plate? Anyway, just about yourself, going right back to the very start, when you were a little wee one, as they say in Ireland and Wales, running around the field. Where did your passion of sport actually come from? Is it something that would be connected to your family, or was it your friends, or where would you kind of pinpoint where you started thinking about?
Definitely my family, 100%, and definitely both my parents. So both of them would have been really sporty, really into sport. And so when I come along, and actually they had me quite young, so when I come along, nothing was going to change. They were still kind of playing their sport. My mum would still be running. So I was kind of dragged along and also encouraged to play, or to, just to be outside and to be on my bike, or go into classes with my mum. I'd kind of be thrown on the side of the gym class or aerobics class as it was in those days. And I actually would know the sequence. So I'd kind of join in at 3 or 4, really, really young. I remember doing that. And then, my dad's side, he'd be massively into rugby. So I was dragged along to rugby matches to watch in the rain and all sorts of weather. So really speaking, up until I was about 13 or 14, my only major influence was really my parents in terms of sport. But I was, like I said, just dragged everywhere and kind of just took it all in. So definitely them, and not so much my friends. In terms of that bit, it was probably me. I was the sporty one. I mean, I know, even looking back now, all of my friends would say 100% you were the sporty one. So I was their influence, I'd say.
Yeah, I know I've had this conversation with quite a few people. I've asked them about that. And what I love about the answer, you've given a pretty similar answer to everybody else around the connection with their family. And what I loved about it is no one ever said, oh, it was when I went to this game and this moment happened on the field, or when it was never that. It was always to do with their friends or their family, in your case, parents, that started dragging them along to games and started getting them involved. Do you look back at that time in your life when you were, as you said, 3 years old, learning all the secrets? By the way, that is quite impressive. Do you remember back in those days really fondly? Is it a memory that kind of sticks out quite well because it's a bonding exercise with your folks?
Yeah, you could probably say that. Like, yeah, I mean, I used to go like 2 or 3 times a week with my mother to this class, so it was kind of what we used to do. And she went and decked me out in all the leotards, and like people used to turn up to this class to see what I was wearing as a 3 or 4 year old. And I remember once we were going through like a sports shop or whatever, and there were like these extra weights that people would put around their wrists and ankles. And she actually bought me the extra weights because I used to find like I would almost get bored because I knew the sequence so well. So it was like another week of keeping me entertained, see how I did with the weights. So yeah, like definitely looking back, yeah, it would have been like not so much a bonding session, but, you know, fond memories of, you know, me and my mum doing that. And then, you know, we were talking earlier, and like in terms of rugby stuff, one of my earliest memories was being on a rugby pitch, and it was like dark, cold, rain. I remember being in like an all-in-one thing. You know, you throw the kids into like the waterproof all-in-ones, not sure what they're called, but I remember having one of them. Yeah, and wellies, and like I remember walking on the pitch, and like it was a local match, like a Wednesday night down the road, local. And I remember like the crowd giving it a bit of thing, and I remember shouting, "Come on, Wales!" Because I just thought that's what I shouted.
Of course you do.
Like, yeah, and like I remember the adults like laughing, like, "Oh, bless it." But that's one of my, and at the time remembering, oh, I think I made a mistake. Like, we're not at a Welsh game, because to me I didn't really know what the difference was. But I just, you know, you kind of watch your parents and all. But yeah, that's definitely one of my oldest memories in terms of being a kid and sport. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I've said this before on a podcast. One of my earliest memories is my father. We used to watch 6Nations at the time, and we used to watch Ireland. And back in the 80s, Ireland weren't very good. And my dad would close the doors, and he'd close all the curtains, so it was like pitch black, like a cinema. And he put on TV.
Oh,
and he had a little, what we call a poof, but I don't know what you call it, a little kind of solid little small thing that he would have. You put your feet on, and he would just literally beat that for the whole game. That would be like getting punched and whatever. And I remember watching him as much as watching the game. That, like, he was as much entertaining as that. Moving on, you said when you went in 12, 13, do you have any, even if it's local memories or local heroes, that you could sit there and go, yeah, I remember as a kid, that player or that person involved in that team was someone I looked up to massively? Yeah,
I think I do, in terms of like local, but the thing is, in Wales, everyone knows each other, and particularly if you work in rugby, your country becomes very small. So I'm going to say like Scott Quinnell and Shane and his brother Craig Quinnell, so like the Quinnell brothers. I remember watching them on TV, and they were such characters, and they were like head and shoulders probably a bit taller than most players. And I think at the time Wales were very strong, like probably would that have been early 90s maybe, or mid 90s when I suppose Scott was playing. And I do remember remembering them on TV. And then later on in life, I'm actually friends with them now. We're all family friends, and like one of the daughters was in my school, so we're very good friends. So like it's all a bit different now in terms of like, you know, I don't look at them in the same way, but I do remember years and years ago looking at them and thinking, wow, they're amazing rugby players. And it's not that I don't think that now, it's just that it's a very different relationship now. But yeah, certainly in terms of local, like, you know, players that were playing around the time within my country kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I remember Doug Howlett was my hero playing for Munster, big Munster. My hero. So I remember he ended up being my boss, but I remember the first day Doug knew my name. I still have chills. I was in my 20s, late 20s, and it still kind of gave me a little chills. Now I'd be like, oh, you almost forget. You're like, oh yeah, everyone really loves this guy because you've been working with him, or you're connected to him. In your case, have fun. So like suddenly you look around and like there's people like, oh my god, that's such and such, and you're going, yeah, it is actually. It's kind of, you forget the level of where they sit with them.
And it's funny because like we don't realize, I suppose, like, you know, these are still heroes to people, but you forget because, like you said, you're in the environment. And for me, like, I can't quite bring myself to say like a rugby player is a hero. I don't get that anymore. And I've never really gotten it a lot. The only person in the world that I've gotten a bit like, I did get to meet Ronaldo a couple of years ago, and under like really random circumstances. And I was, for the moment, for that like few seconds, I understand what people feel like when they like meet their heroes, because you are a bit like, oh my gosh, is that really him? So I got it with him, but I genuinely don't really get it with rugby players at this stage.
I'm going to say, if I ever met Eddie Vedder from a band called Pearl Jam, I think I might actually be puddle on the ground. I fully get that. I fully get what that gets to. Moving on towards when you were going into your teens, and you said a lot of your friends weren't necessarily into sport, but your family was all oriented towards it. Did you always see yourself as wanting to get involved in sport? Or was it something that you, I'm not saying fell into, but it was something that you just kind of moved into in that direction?
Yeah, it's probably, it kind of, I suppose people around me would probably say like, oh, she was always going to work in sport, or she was always going to be in sport. There wasn't like a time where I was like, that's it, I'm going to work in sport. But also at the same time, I never ever thought of anything else. Like I probably didn't give it much thought until I was too far down the road, so to speak. Yeah, like I was always around sport. I played an awful lot of sport growing up. I went to like a sports specialist school towards the end of my academic studies, and then I kind of just fell into it. But there's never been another time where I thought, oh, what else was I going to do in my life? So far, so good in that respect.
And getting yourself towards the 6Nations and getting towards the role you have now, like it's a highly pressurized role. It's a very, very important role within what you do within 6Nations, and it's the stuff that goes on, as you said earlier on, behind the scenes that people may not see. If you could go back to yourself when you first started getting involved in a professional job to now, what advice would you have given yourself back then, that would have made your life a little bit easier, or just a little bit of advice for you that you've learned over the years that stand out?
Yeah, I do get asked this question a lot. Like I get it, you know, people will email and, you know, out of school or at college, university, and say like, how do you get your job? And it's not as easy. There isn't an easy answer. And I think everyone's road is different. But what I would say is like hard work and sheer determination to keep pushing and keep being better. And I'm not in the work that you put out, or, you know, once you get to a certain point of decisions that you get to make, but also like building your network and being someone that actually is likable, or being someone that is relatable or contactable or approachable. Like all of these things are massive when it comes to someone thinking about you for a role, or I'll tell you what, I'll give this project to this member of my team or member of staff. Like you do have to be likable, and I think that's great. It's easy to be likable. Like you have to be honest, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be kind of like, you have to appreciate that other people have other challenges, maybe outside the project or outside the job that they're doing, and like just be a decent person. And then for me, I just feel opportunities do come. Like if you're willing to keep pushing the door, keep working hard, and keep being a decent person, I do believe that things come your way. That's kind of what I've tried to do. And so far, like I said, so far so good. But yeah, like, you know, some people are known for being, you know, hard work and challenging to work with. But if their core is good, and if what they're trying to do is the right thing, then I think everyone will work with that and work around it. So yeah, that would be my advice. And I do sympathize, I think, with people coming through at this stage, because, you know, sport has always been an attractive kind of thing to do, or place to work, to be in that environment. And it is very, very competitive. And I know that some people, you know, they do work hard and they give it all they've got, and they still don't get anywhere. And I do totally sympathize with that. But then they just can't give up, you know, you just have to keep going. I think volunteering, like, that is massive. And volunteering and actually putting a lot of effort into it. So putting yourself in a position of, you know, to volunteer, which I think most, you know, if you put yourself forward, most people will accept help and take you on. And then being really on it and being really available and going the extra mile. And then bit by bit, you'll find that something will come up and a door will open.
Yeah, I think what you're missing and what you spoke about is talent, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, good at what you do and being confident in what you can achieve and succeed. I 100% agree with you around the volunteering part. I think I've seen it even when I worked at Munster. I would say 20% of the full-time staff came from volunteering and came from guys and girls who worked for free for a period of time. And then suddenly they said, look, I've got to go get a job now. And the Munster went, oh my God, this person's so good, we can't let them go. Would you work with us? And I think a lot of people think that clubs or federations have all these staff members doing all these different jobs, when in fact the biggest problem I would see within sports federations and clubs is time. That it's just physical time to do things as well. They run out of time, whether it's the project is too big or whether there's just not enough man hours in the day. Or those are the kind of things that intrigue me. But I do 100% agree with you with the hard work, dedication, and also don't be scared to contact people. Don't be scared to put yourself out there. Don't be scared to do that, because you said it there. People email you and contact me. I would have got the same. And the vast majority of people, if they're good people, they will take some time out of their day to try and help somebody else. Would you kind of agree with that?
Absolutely. And like for me, like people reach out, and I remember reaching out, you know, so we've not all just gotten here on our own. We've all been, you know, kind of guided, or a bit of advice, or can you meet me for coffee? What's my next thing? We've all, I suppose, used those opportunities. So when someone asks me, of course I'm going to do that, you know, like that's the least I can do. And also for the people who are trying to, you know, get the opportunity, like you said, don't be scared, don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing is, you know, it's a no, and then you can find someone else. Definitely agree 100%.
And I think it's a fascinating one where you see people, and I've seen it a few times, who've contacted me and I've just followed them on LinkedIn or kept an eye on them, and suddenly you see them, oh my God, they're now such and such wherever that may be. And I find that fascinating. Also, the other thing I would say to anybody listening to that is that it's not just your own country, it's not just your own area. Try and get yourself out there and learn as much from as many places as you can, because
100%. Like we both, we've both, you know, lived in different countries, and that's really important, particularly in a sports context, because, you know, like Wales is too small, you know, you need to, an island is kind of too small. You need to get out, get beyond that, get, you know, a different network in the same sport, but in a different country with a different culture, or vice versa, same country, different sport, like just broaden it as much as you can. And some people I do find, like, you know, I love football, so I want to work in football, but actually you can eventually end up working in football, but maybe look elsewhere, you know, do another sport that you're not familiar with. It'll give you so much experience that when the football opportunity comes up, you will still be at the top of the pack because you've got the experience just in a different sport. And a lot of these things are transferable. Like a lot of it is transferable.
Yeah. Again, I totally agree. And you look at, sometimes people want to get work and they niche themselves completely. And not only do I want to work in football, I want to work for Liverpool, or I want to work for Manchester United, or I want to work for England rugby team or Ireland rugby team. And that's a very, very, very small market you're getting to, and you should be looking outside of that, because then when jobs come up, people are going to be impressed if you've got the whatever that may be, whether it's events, whether it's commercial, that if you're the head of that for whatever federation or club that may be, that stands to you. Just moving on to some of the things that you've seen yourself from a stadium perspective. I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Where is there one stadium that you've been to that is just taking your breath away and gone, yeah, this is of the highest level you can get to?
I know you think I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So in terms of me and what I get and what I go looking for whenever I get to go to a rugby match, that's not something that I'm working on. It is obviously the Principality Stadium, but that's not from a necessarily like a fan engagement perspective or even an overall experience. It's more just because it's my country, it's my team, and obviously I feel passionate about that, particularly when I'm not working. When I'm working, I don't feel it at all, but when I am working, I don't feel it. When I'm not working, I do feel it. But in terms of an overall wow at the moment, and more so in rugby, is Stade de France. It's a fantastic stadium. I think for a while I think it's fair to say there was a bit of a lull with Stade de France, maybe like a good few years ago, when maybe the French team wasn't as strong and the audience maybe was a bit random. Now, when you go there, and in the last couple of years, when the team has really, really kind of been getting better and better, and so excited, such good rugby, and the crowd are really solid rugby fans, the atmosphere is unreal. The FFR, for me, they do it the best. There's so much effort, so much kind of, I suppose, budget that goes into them delivering a good show, like the pyrotechnics, the firework, the singing, like It is fantastic. And French rugby, French cultural rugby is really, really, really exciting as well. And you get to feel it all, you know, the singing. So for me at the moment, it's Stade de France and the French team, particularly when it's a big game. So, you know, like, I suppose more recent France, Australia. I think, I can't remember the last time what match I was there. I was there in November. But yeah, it's really, really cool. And then in a previous life and a previous job, I was obviously with international football, and I went to the weirdest and wonderfulest stadiums all over Europe in the randomest parts of random countries on like Wednesday nights. And honestly, you'd have to like laugh, because some of these grounds, they're just so peculiar, so like unusual. I think there was a stadium in Aarhus in North, I want to say Poland, and we played Poland there, I think. And the thing is with international football, you play so many matches, you do actually forget what country stadiums, So yeah, I think it was. And there was this, it was during COVID, so there was like no crowd, but there was, from the dressing rooms to the actual pitch, there was like a 200-meter tunnel, and it literally went pretty much underground, and it was all graffitied, and there was like hardly any lights, and it was bizarre. And when we walked down, I was like, we've taken the wrong route, but that's what it was. It was like bizarre, hilarious, cool, like, yeah, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's mad what you start seeing around stadiums that you get to. You become a bit of a stadium geek. So I would never have been a stadium geek before I started working professionally in it. And I remember, this is going way back, it was 2012, 2013. I remember Munster played Clermont in a Heineken Cup semi-final in Montpellier. And I went with my now wife, or girlfriend, and I went with a friend of mine as well. We turned up, and it was half an hour before kickoff, and there was no Clermont fans anywhere. And I was thinking, oh, this is amazing. Munster going to have loads of fans. It's going to be brilliant. And suddenly, with half an hour to go, you just hear a beat of a drum.
Yeah, they all come in together, don't they? Yeah.
And they all came together, and they were on a bus, and there was like there was people dressed. It was one of the most amazing scenes I've ever seen ever. And they were lovely. They were brilliant. They were chopping flags, but it was like a wave of this. And it was just unbelievable culture that came with it. And I'd advise everybody to try and go to as many stadiums as you can, obviously affordable. But if you're around, go and see them and be part of it, even if it's not your team playing, because they all have a uniqueness about them. And they all have, the Principality is, obviously, it is honestly my top 2 stadiums in the world. It's just, I've been there to watch Munster win a Heineken Cup, but I've also been there when Ireland played Wales and lost. And you just felt you were in something bigger than just a rugby game. And I think that's vital for stadiums, because for me, sport is about creating moments. It's not necessarily about creating this try was scored or that try was scored. It's about creating those individual moments. And that's one of the things I'm going to go to you before I come to my last section is those moments in the future. So what do you see, having the experiences you've had working in professional sport for such a long time, how do you see the future of sport? Both commercially or just the actual future of sport? Yeah,
I think that's a big question, because I could talk all day about all the different areas and elements and the future and the challenges and, you know, what we're trying to do even from a rugby perspective. But I think if you focus on one area, which is a big area of the future of sport, is the women's game. And you know, I'm not using this platform to push that message, but it really, really is a massive part of the future. And because an awful lot of our sports are dominated by the men and the male, and that's fine, but we've got this whole other world that is going to grow with time, and it's going to become just as exciting in its own right and for different reasons. And I think the opportunities that will come with all of that are just really, really, really exciting. For us, kind of sitting on this side of the fence, for the fans, for the players themselves, and also commercially for the sponsors and the brands that can get involved going forward. So yeah, for me, it's the women's game, and it's all elements of the women's game. And, you know, once we kind of, that momentum starts, I think there'll be opportunities also to enhance the men's game. And that's for me, that's really important as well, to make the whole product, whatever sport it is, whoever's playing it, make it bigger, make it better. And I think we can learn a little bit from the women's game. I think the women's game has to be quite brave and not worry about what if we make this mistake, what if this doesn't work, because the men's game never worried about that when they made decisions and they made mistakes. You know, we got around them, we made them different, we made different decisions, we sorted out the mistakes. So I think the only real barrier to the women's game is the women's game itself. And if we can just kind of get over that, I do think that's what's really exciting in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's been, I live in Sweden, live in Gothenburg, and what I found amazing when I first came over here 18 months ago was my father-in-law said, come on, do you want to go to a game on Saturday? And we got into the car, drove down to the game, drove into the stadium. Only when I sat on my seat did I realise whether it was a men's game or a women's game.
Yeah. That's
the future. That's the way you want to get to it. And they've an agreement with the TV stations that if you have X amount of hours of men's sport, you have to have X amount of women's sport, the same level on both sides. And it can be different sports. Obviously, it doesn't have to be football 10 hours, football 10 hours. It can break it up, but it's got to still have the same feel to it. Same when it goes to commentators, same when it goes to everybody. And what I noticed when I went back to Ireland, which I loved, was around the Women's World Cup and how the Irish team was so well supported by Sky. Let's be honest, commercially, I think Sky did a really good job. And I think what they did even better, and I've spoken about this before, was that when they did the launch of the team, they had a little kid kicking the ball against the wall, and she was talking about Katie McCabe, and she was talking about all the different players. And I think where we really want to get to is where women now, or girls now, can look at other scenarios where they can look at, let's say, in the case of an Irish girl, they can look at Katie McCabe playing football. They can look at Katie Taylor in boxing. They can look at Dorothy Wall in rugby, for example, and see them as their heroes rather than have to have Messi, Ronaldo, etc., etc., etc. The one thing I will say, and the one comment I will make on that, is that we do still have a step to go. And what I mean by that is something I saw that really annoyed me is one of the national TV stations on their website had got England women 0, Spain women 1, for argument's sake. And I was like, okay, if you do that for the women, you've got to also do that for the men. You've got to say England. And unfortunately, it wasn't the case. So when England played, it was England 1, Spain 0, or whatever. And I think there's steps to go. But if I'm talking to brands, and I'm talking to like clubs, what their next future is, I 100% agree with you. It's on women, because also the women in sport now, they understand that they're the trailblazers for the future, and they're the ones that are going to be what they do now will be recognized going into the future.
And we also have 100%. Like it's such an exciting time, because you've not only got those, the women that are playing at the top peak of performance at the moment, and they're aware of their responsibility and where they leave, whatever it is, if it's the jersey or whatever sport they're playing in, wherever they leave that, it's a better place than where they took it, which is a great way of looking at it. But you've also got women involved in the decision making now. You've got women on boards, you've got women CEOs, you've got women at the top table, women that understand, that have risk assessed and being the ones talking to brands and creating concepts. These are women that probably or maybe didn't, but in some cases have played sport themselves, have been up against it in their own whatever sport they played. So that's all very different this time to what it would have been 10, 15 years ago. So for that, the decisions will be different, and I think the pathway and in the future will be different, and different in a good way. And I really do think it will progress quite quickly in the next couple of years.
Yeah, there is definitely a feeling of positivity around it. And there's definitely a feeling of not like it was before. And I would 100% agree with you. As someone who has 2 older sisters, has a young daughter, I'm ecstatic to see the future for my daughter when it comes to deciding whether she wants to play for Sweden or play for Ireland. But I want to watch my daughter, and so that she can look at these and go, I want to be that, not stop playing sport, because that is a big challenge, especially when girls stopping around 15, 16. So it's about trying to make sure that goes into. I'm going to go on to my last final piece, right, which is my quick fire one, right? Don't worry, just whatever you think. There's nothing scary in here. I don't think so anyway. I don't think. You can scream at me if you want. So very quick thinking. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Netflix or cinema?
Cinema.
Oh, I love it. You're the first person to give me cinema. Love it. Last cinema, our last show you went, what would you say was in the show? You went to?
Barbie.
Brilliant answer.
And I hadn't been in the cinema for ages before then, so it was quite, that one was quite recent,
If I said to you, what's your favorite ever try you've ever seen?
Oh, it's got to be the Scott Gibbs try against England-Wales, or Wales-England, actually. It was in Wembley, wasn't it? Because they were building that 100%.
He bounced off around 12 players to score. I loved Scott Gibbs as a kid, because the British and Irish Lions, he just was embodiment of everything of a rugby player for me. I just thought he was just class. Best holiday destination?
I love Mexico. Try to go maybe every year, every 2 years with my family. So Mexico, yeah.
Favorite takeaway? You can say like an Indian, or you can say a specific takeaway that's like, yeah, that's the one.
Have to go.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Club or country?
Country.
Okay, in Sweden we have a thing called a fika. So a fika is when you have like a coffee and a cake, and it's usually like around 3 o'clock in the day, and it's a lovely. Everyone goes and bees around. It's a lovely fika. So that's the reason why I say this. So it's fika or go to the pub.
Fika.
If sport was to be banned from ever existing, from right now, excluding your job, so somebody got you a job, something else, somewhere else, and you've got employed, so money isn't an issue, what would be the impact of sport not being around your life?
Massive. It would kind of be every day for me. So whether I'm playing it or training to play it, obviously work aside, or watching it, thinking about it, conscious of it, looking forward to something else, it would be massive for me. It's kind of a little bit of everything all I've ever done or known in one way or another. And my mother will tell you that if a hockey match got cancelled when I was young, I literally would have like a breakdown. So it's kind of everything to me in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. My scenario when I was younger is I was a big obsessive West Ham fan for my kids' sins. And West Ham never won anything, got relegated 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. And I remember being 12 and my mom said it was so bad that they all left the house because before the final whistle, because it looked like West Ham going to get relegated. I was 12 and they all, like the whole family had to leave because my little meltdown that would happen. Yeah. Holly, thank you so much for your time. Massively appreciate it. It's fantastic to get to talk to somebody who's behind the scenes and knows what they're doing. Very impressive what they're going to be. People who watch this, when you now go to 6Nations games and you see all this event working fantastically well and looking really well, there's the person as to why. Holly, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
That was Holly. I mean, it was fantastic to listen to somebody talk so passionately about what they do, but also show their pathway and the importance that they see around women's sport and the growth opportunities that are there. And not just because she's female, not just because she works in the sports industry, but she can see a pathway for brands, clubs and federations to get better, and the sport can get better. And I think very important point that she made, that it wasn't just about growing the women's sport just for growing the women's sport, it was growing the women's sport to help the overall sport that involved in it. The other nugget that I liked as well was right at the very start when she spoke about how you get into the industry and sometimes you're not successful and sometimes it doesn't work for you. And I think that's something to be knowledgeable about going around. But if you find a way, whether that's volunteering, whether it's any other way you possibly can to get involved with a sport and work your way in, that's more than happy to do so. My music is going to kick me in. So that's what I'm going to get.